Welcome back, you guys. This is the Art School Graduate. We are back again here in February with another phenomenal designer that I just got to let you guys know I'm excited about this one. So let me slowly introduce him, because what I'm going to say probably doesn't even cover all the things of how great this man is. He's a thinker. He's an innovator. He is a provocateur. He just doesn't create. He questions, he disrupts, and he redefines what design is. I have the great Eddie Opara with me on the podcast today. Thank you, Eddie.
It's really glad to be here, Justin. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Forgive me about the name. I told you I get excited.
Okay. If you really want to go into it, aspects of being Nigerian, British Nigerian, it's Opara, but we won't go there.
Hey, well, since we're talking about you, and this is a showcase of you and sharing who you are, my audience, how did those experiences shape your perspective as a designer growing up, middle class, immigrant family in a completely different country? How was that for you?
Yeah, I mean, to step back, I was born in London and grew up in London up to the age of 22. Yeah, it was different. I didn't, when you're sort of growing up in a immigrant family, especially a Nigerian immigrant family, there are specific things that you must do. And that is, you must be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, or something around those specific areas to really have your parents and also their friends, be proud of you. But that wasn't the case with me. I had a dad who actually worked a little bit in the ad area in the late 60s. And I recall a conversation that we were having in kitchen, my mum's kitchen. And my dad he also worked in Nigeria. I won't go into that just yet, but it was the idea that it was a story that he was stating that he worked with the Saatchi brothers, but he didn't really interact with them. And if advertising, they're enormous. And I just, turned around. I was like, couldn't believe that, that was the case. But he also was a person that would always say, you can have a profession like to be a doctor, but do you know being a carpenter is just as good? It is even better in certain circumstances, and he would use this sort of term of like saying, who makes the most amount of money, a doctor or a carpenter, a master carpenter. And then he would say they both about the same. And he's not wrong. The aspects of trade and the aspects of like, a profession that comes from university, they should not be seen at different levels. And that was unique, I would say towards my family, because, I was the youngest and they knew that I was, you could say, artistic. And it was really my father stating these things that allowed me to sort of wrestle with the idea of actually going to art school, which he was a very pious man, a very, very religious man. And so go there, do your best. God will be with you. And I just saw that as a blessing, and that was fantastic. Not many people get that. So, growing up in an immigrant family, it can be tough. He spent all their money putting me and my other siblings, my sister who's a dean at university now, my brother is IT for a school system in London, and then myself through private school when we were young, but then what we call comprehensive school when we were 14, which is state-based. So they use all their money to do that, and they'll do anything to make their kids, grow up and be successful, right? And so the idea of that types of experience that shaped me as a designer is very clear. You've got to be, I would say, really honest. Okay. You want to look at things at so many different perspectives, take anything for granted, and work your bollocks off. And if you are of the religious type, call to God or whomever,
Yep.
and he will,
Get out.
he'll help you, he'll aid you.
Yeah.
So, I sort of benefited from that. But I also benefited from another sort of aspect where during the 70s, when you're growing up as a black kid in London, there's always a lot of hate. There's always hate all the time. But it was pretty expressive back then. I remember there's one time like my sister had to protect me from a total idiot, and it was racially
Faded.
activated, and at school as well. And you grow a thick skin, of course, you grow a thick skin. But the aspect of of getting into the profession as well, you understand that there's a sort of group, a sort of club that you're not sort of part of. And I wasn't even there at that time. I got to that particular point in the 90s. In the 70s, you sort of grow that thick skin. You understand what you have to wrestle with and get down to it.
Did it ever come across to you to like include your story in your art, like your struggle, what you had to go through and all that to portray and be more authentic in your work?
Yeah, back then, not so much. Not really. I just wanted to understand what graphic design was. I did my A levels when I was like 18, 19 years of age. Yeah. And I went to London College of Printing. And before that, I recall that I was in art class, sort of figuring out what I'm doing. I think it was like a still life class, and one of my great friends, Mark Douglas, said, you should be a graphic designer when he was looking at my work, and he sort of said that. I sort of turned around. I was like, what? I wasn't even thinking about it. I wanted to be an architect. It just didn't come to mind. And it's like, just look at your composition and how you're drawing, and you should really think about it. And so I sort of went home, thought about it. A couple of weeks later, about a month later, went to my art teacher, started discussing aspects of graphic design with him. And so, back then, I just wanted to understand what it is, what it does, need.
Yes.
And then when I got into art school, I actually jumped over the year. I didn't do a foundation course, the standard sort of diploma structure that you actually have in Europe. Went into the degree, and back then I was flailing because I didn't have this mixed media type of basis, this foundation to grow from. And I started to sort of read certain books, picked up Emigre magazine back then,
Yeah.
90, it was 91, and it just, I think it came out in 90 or 89, 90. And I was just enthralled with this, the idea of what postmodernism was, or deconstructionism, and how you can apply it in a very aesthetic way. I didn't really understand the functions of the graphics. And so I started to insert at that time my own types of narrative into the work, because I was like, it needs to be more than just technique and aesthetic composition. There's got to be more to this. And when people say that, is it functioning? Of course it's functioning. You can read it.
Right.
But functionality is a little bit more than that, of course. And so I started to imbue the work with other factors, and those factors were underlying narratives that I wanted to sort of introduce. But then I started to then understand from the idea of layering messages into a piece. I started to figure out that there may, to myself, I was like, maybe I could create this sort of three-tiered system of reading information. One is the basic information that you need to, for the event that you attracted to the graphic. So that's not really a level. It's just there. It's like, well, that's interesting. What's it doing? And I can read the information. And then the second level is looking at the technique and the overarching composition. And then the third level is the most advanced level. There's a message in there that's, beyond the message that the event is actually stating. There's a specific narrative, and if there's a series of them, there's a particular thread that's going to occur. So in a way, it's very much like art, right? Okay. But it's also it's utilitarian, but it's also very conceptual, and also it can be seen as being very sort of postmodern, if you want to use that term.
Yes. Wow. Thank you for breaking that down. Thank you for breaking that down. That was a straight nugget right there of like how to look at things and go through it with a fine-tuned comb, and how to attract people to your work and tell them more than party starts at 9. This is the attire. It's like bring a whole conversation into it.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you just mentioned earlier about how you studied at London College of Printing, and then you went to Yale for your MFA. So what were the most transformative aspects of your education from going from London to the United States? Because I know it's very, very different sometimes.
Culturally it's different, but education is entirely different. So London College of Printing, which is now called the London College of Communications, the LCC, it's part of the University of Arts in London. It was really about craft. When I use the term technique, it really is about understanding the aspects of graphic design in a functional way, but through craftsmanship. And so you really didn't have to concern yourself so much with, you had to write certain essays for specific subject matter, but it wasn't exceedingly cerebral. It wasn't really in depth. It wasn't really a design discourse. There wasn't sort of critical thinking, and there wasn't really the sort of outstretched, interconnected elements to deal with art and philosophy or theology or science. And when you go to Yale, there is.
Yeah.
It's not so much about the craftsmanship, to be absolutely honest. They're saying, well, you've done that. Now let's see if you can go a lot further. Right? Let's see if you can find yourself, right? And that's not easy, because you've come from an environment that establishes that you are a designer for, you could say, the people. Very utilitarian in that particular case in point, as I said before. Now you're being exceedingly selfish. You're looking inward. There's a very introspective kind of aspect to it, and you're supposed to study yourself. Like, what makes you you, and what, you have these particular interests, but how is it really affecting the aspects of design as such? The idea of authorship comes into mind. And so I didn't have it was a little tough at first. The first few months, I was pretty much homesick, but I sort of try to take, it was a little bit like duck to water, really, because that's what I really wanted to do. I wanted to find, what really, really interested me, who I was, what I wanted to, and how I could project that out into the world. And it was really fun and exciting, but I wasn't well read. I didn't come from a place where I had read a lot of philosophy and a lot of critical thinking. And there were students that they had come from different areas. And that was really quite stunning as well. There's Yale actually is 2 years, but it actually has a 3-year course called it prelim course. And I think nearly every one of those students actually comes from an entirely different area, different practice, that they actually have an interest within graphic design and what it means. And so they really can delve into graphic design in a different sort of way, in different type of light. They're very fastidious students, exceedingly cerebral, exceedingly intelligent, and really have this fast tracked course at 1 year to really get them up to speed. 4 years.
That's crazy. Wow. So did you ever feel like kind of out of place when you, outside of being homesick, did you ever look at some of their work or see what they were working on and feel like, whoa, I need to sharpen this or get better at it? Or was it kind of like, okay, I know where I'm at and I know where I need to get to?
Yeah, I would say it was more, I could appreciate what they've done. They've gone beyond the fundamentals, but they could really talk about a work. They didn't talk about the composition, the spatial composition, the tension, the association, the hierarchies. They didn't really go into that type of knowledge. They would talk about the subject matter and what it meant to them and what they were trying to portray. And that was impressive. I mean, it was, seriously articulate, very, very impressive. And sometimes you want to, reach for the, what I use, the headache pills, the paracetamol, Advil.
Tylenol,
Your
Advil,
head just like, can't get through this. It's a lot, but that's interesting. And so, you start to you observe that, you start to think about what they're portraying, and you want to then start to balance what you have done with what, with your technique. You've advanced on your techniques. You're also advancing on the different mediums that you're doing. Because so when I went to Yale, I started to, work in motion, work in interactive as well, and also installation work. My motion teacher there, Emily Oberman, who's my partner now. And so, but then you also try to balance it with being a lot more, you try to be articulate, but then sometimes, and this was stated by my professor who became my boss, Michael Rock, who runs 2x4, partly 2x4, said that I was exceedingly enigmatic, very puzzling, partly convoluted, I think a little bit too hard to be cerebral, and it's not, in a sense, not paying off. But he did hire me eventually at 2x4 for a few years, and so there must have been something working.
Yeah. So I know, and you shared that, you spent a year in Holland. Now, was that during your MFA time or was that after? Because you said that year really like switched it for you.
It wasn't so much a year. It felt like a year.
Got you. Okay.
I think it was up to like 4.5 months.
Wow.
And it really felt like a year. So my course, I don't have a degree in graphic design, by the way. I have a degree called media production design. So does my partner, Angus Highland, who also went to the LCP. And my other partner, Dominic Lippo, who went to LCP, actually has a graphic design degree. And so I did graphic design and art direction as well, photography and a lot of mixed stuff. So it was my second year, and I was feeling I was slightly stuck. And one of my best friends, Iwei Chen, came up to me and said, "Do you want to go to Holland?" Well, I was like, "Well, are you going to Holland?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to Holland. Going on an exchange. And do you want to come?" And I said, "Yes, I did." And at the time, Dutch design was ruled. It's the 90s, and the Dutch and certain schools in the US, such as Cranbrook, were really kicking up dust arts as well, and doing some really interesting stuff. But the Dutch really had a solid grounding. You had Verken, you had Studio Dunbar, which is still there, but with Gert Dunbar at the head, and so in Potsdam, there's a fair amount. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I totally want to go. So I went, and I went to the Utrecht School of Art, and it wasn't that I had any classes. Didn't really have any classes. It was really tough. didn't fully understand. I roomed with a gentleman named of Arthur Herman, who is also a friend. It was at his house. He was with his girlfriend at the time in Utrecht, in the Turkish quarter called Lombok, and on a street called Samaterstraat. And I just got a bike, rode around, went to school. Basically, I didn't know whether there was a class or whether there wasn't. You sometimes see a teacher and talk. I would use the facilities. It gave me freedom to just understand and observe the Dutch. And then I also went on a sort of mini tour, you could say, of different studios in Amsterdam, in Den Haag, The Hague. That really was an eye opener, especially when I went to Studio Dunbar and met Go Dunbar. I never drank back then. I was still quite athletic, and I didn't really drink. And he was having a Grolsch beer at lunchtime. He's like, "Come on, have a drink." All right. And so it was very relaxed, and we had a fantastic conversation about design, and met everybody else in the studio. And so what happened was this sense of just needed to relax. You needed to open yourself up to other things, not one way of thinking, multiple ways of thinking, and enjoy what you're doing. Right. And that's what Holland really did for me. It's such an open culture. Mm-hmm. It really is. And I appreciate it to today. To this day, I actually have two Dutch designers working for me. One is senior designer, Ruben, and a new intern, Johannes. And they're both from Utrecht. And they were taught by Arthur, who's a teacher there. So
wow,
the connections.
It's like full circle almost. Yeah. Oh, wow. So I know you have a very big standing on being a well-rounded designer.
Yeah.
Or, that's your philosophy. So this approach now that I'm coming to is the MAP office and your approach to creative leadership. So can you just break down what the MAP office was and then your approach to creative leadership?
Yeah. So I was on a bus in Buenos Aires with one of my best friends, George Plesko, who I went to Yale with. I was just leaving tour, and we were gonna join up and run a studio. And he was up in Boston, where I used to live in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And so we were on this bus going to a wedding of a friend. And he was like, "Okay, we've got to get a name and to the studio." And came up with some unusual names. Well, a friend of mine actually had a name, and I relayed it to George, and it was like cheese on toast. And and he was like, no. And so, what about? I can't remember. I think George said, "What about Matt?" And I said, "That's not bad." And it's because of George's thesis at Yale was about mapping, or the different ideas of what mapping can actually do, different types of narratives that are within maps. And I really like that, because a lot of people fundamentally think that maps are just geographic, indicators to navigate to a particular location, that type of thing. And then they're not. There's so many different types, as we all know. And that's what really, made it great. It's a great name. And also it sort of to the ability to be able to do anything, in any which way. And
so dope.
And so, when we started this, we started the studio. I started the studio. I sort of set it up, and George was still working at our old company, Art Technology Group in Cambridge, Mass. And unfortunately, he didn't really come on board. And still really great, best sort of friends today. Yes. And but that whole methodology carried on. It sort of started, I would say, at Yale, where, okay, I want to understand. I came from a school that really focused on print and printed elements and photography. I in art direction. Let me look into motion. let me take interactive, let me focus on this sort of digital environmental thing, and so on. And so it's like, well, I can really do all of these, can't I? I'm really having a lot of fun. And then when I left school, with Yale with George, when we went to Boston and Cambridge, Massachusetts area, and worked at Art Technology Group I worked there for three years, working on some really amazing stuff, really innovative stuff. One of them partly social media, and then I left, and I worked for Imaginary Forces, motion graphics extraordinaires, and then I worked for 2x4, where I took the sort of interactive digital area, really complex stuff that we were really doing, built that into some of the things that we were doing at Imaginary Forces at the time, a massive job in sort of digital environment. And then I moved to 2x4 and then started utilizing interactive digital print environment. And then just like said, it's really good to be an all-rounder. It's like you're a master of none.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, you're always going to have a specialist, but you can always have great conversations and get really into the technical aspects if you needed to, and pull yourself out, but also be the sort of conceptual head and the aspect, the direction that you want to go in. And then you can also pull all of them together if there's a job that actually needs that. And so, that's what I love. That's what I really like. I do admire people that are very, very specific about their needs, but I fundamentally think that if you take on the range of design or communications, visual communications within that particular spectrum, you'd have a lot more to say. Mm-hmm. And you'd have, a great deal of understanding about anything and everything.
Man, I would have loved to hear the other names. If you got cheese on crackers, that's a funny one.
Cheese on toast. That was
cheese on toast. Yes,
that's from my friend Nathan Kalp, who's a very well known now, and he really was like, on that night, he was really going at it. So I had to really relay that to George when we got to. I can't remember that. I think that was just like George and Eddie. Oh, Edward and George. That was one of them. Very regal, very
sounds weird. Like a law firm. Oh wow!
There was another one called Skin, but SKN. That came from me. I was like, it should be short, three letters. And then George said Map, but we actually couldn't get Map as a URL, so we got the Map Office. That's why we called the Map Office, but for short, Map. Yeah.
Wow, that's dope. So, I mean, as the Map Office began to grow, you were then approached with the decision to move to, I think, one of the craziest, largest firms in Pentagram. So how did that transition change your career trajectory? Because you went from being like the head of it, to doing all these things, to now it's almost like poaching now, where they're just like, oh, you're good, we need you here.
Yeah.
How did that help? How did that change?
It changed a lot. I believe I got a call or an email. I can't remember, an email from Lisa Strasfeld. And Lisa at the time was a partner at Pentagram. But I knew Lisa from being a lecturer at Yale. I was a lecturer at Yale. But I also knew her in a connection to my former job in Cambridge, Massachusetts, because she knew my bosses, Jeet and Joe, who actually went to MIT. One went to Media Lab and the others went to the business school. And she knew them. And so there's a trail there. And she just said, look, Eddie, we have this lecture series at the time. It's Pentagram. And we would like you to, give a talk. And I think she wanted me to give a talk because at Yale, my class, actually, it was co-teaching with George, was called Visualization of a Dynamic Information or Data. And it was really quite interesting, very interesting course. And if you know Lisa, she's queen bee of data visualization, and my now partner, Georgia Lupi. And I said, okay, yeah. I said, can I bring my team? And there was about 6 or 7 of us, and my girlfriend at the time, now my wife. And they were like, yeah. And says, and there'll be food. I'm like, food? Oh yeah, we're coming. Yeah, coming.
You will win any group when you say food is there.
Food and drink.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm going to have some fun. And that was it. That was it. I gave the lecture. I talked about some of the work that I had done at 204, as well as the map office what I was working on. And the front row, it was in our old office at Pentagram, just off Madison Square Park, and it was a lovely, sort of very small conference room, and it opened up into the dining area, so there was a lot more people that could actually see the presentation. And at the front row, Michael Barrett, Michael Gericke, Lisa, I was Luke Heyman, Abbott, Miller, and I was like, yeah. Oh my God. I knew Abbott. I knew Michael Barrett because they were the connection with Yale. And at the time, and I didn't really know. I kind of knew Luke, and I really had never met Paula before, which was really strange. Or Michael Gericke. And we had some dinner afterwards, and Paula couldn't make it. And she said, oh, we'll have some lunch another time. I was like, yeah. So about a week went past, I think, or week and a half, that I got an email that said, from Paula, would you like to go to lunch? And I was like, yeah, you could come around my ways. Our studio, map office studio, was in Chinatown. Yeah, we have a nice, lovely place on Lafayette, and, we'll go there. And it was sort of a Swiss restaurant that's not there anymore. And I remember nearly choking on my chicken schnitzel and salad and caprese salad. And when she said, would you like to join Pentagram? And the funny thing is, one of my designers said, oh, you're going to Polish, yeah, but we're going to go join Pentagram. And I was like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I literally was not thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that sort of, that was fascinating. It took me by surprise. And she sort of explained really what Pentagram's about. And is a collective partnership, right? That you have a myriad of different partners that run, you could say, their own studios, but that make a greater group that makes Pentagram. But you can also interconnect with those different partners and their teams. And it's because it's, the same company. And, there's no C-suite, you could say, hierarchy. There's no CFO, there's a CEO, there's a COO, there's a CTO structure. And we are the, partners, and you would, place equity into that company over the course of time and become an owner, right? So,
wow.
So that's how it works. And I was feeling kind of lonely anyway. It was also 2008, 2009.
Wow. Yeah.
Great recession, really, really hard.
Yeah.
And I was really contemplating. I had just met my girlfriend, my wife, and we were thinking of going back to Europe. And my family, my father was a bit sick back then. I was like, yeah, bollocks to this. I'm going to go home. But, they came ringing, and it took me a while. I really, really had to decide, because this could be the rest of my life. It's not just a, 1 or 2 a year thing. You're really invested. And so it took a while. It really did. And then that email, he emailed me back. He said, have you decided yet? And I said, yes, I wouldn't mind joining. And so the fact of the matter is that I still hadn't joined, because I still needed to be interviewed by every single partner. And that's how it works. And if there's one partner that doesn't like you, or doesn't feel as though you fit, that's it.
Wow. So there's no, we can have a come to Jesus conversation about it. Like, hey, there's 6 of us. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Reversal of fortunes has happened.
So now that you're in this place and you're in this space, I know is, like you said, it was surprising, and I know it had to be super humbling to be there. But what was your biggest, I would say, challenge, or better yet, moment of growth when you joined Pentagram? What is something you felt like, oh, wow, I have to adjust. I didn't know things kind of work like that or went like that.
Yes. We had, at the Map Office, we actually had built our own software. And it was actually a content management system that was actually really before its time. It utilized what we called a RIA, a rich interactive. It was a rich interactive application. So it's not just drag and drop. It had other features that desktop-based applications have. That was actually within the browser. And you're talking about 2007, and it really was something else. And it could connect to building flash sites, but it could also connect to build HTML sites. So, and we had brought that over. It was called the MIG, and we brought it over, and we actually utilized it. We integrated it into the Pentagram website, and some of my clients back then were using it. But the issue was that, you can't really build, at the time, I just couldn't establish how to build out a software, you could say software company, inside of Pentagram. Right. And I remember a good friend of mine, Philip Chongson, who runs Potion Design, and we used to share studio with him, had said this earlier to me. It's like, look, you've got this MIG, do you want to, and I remember Squarespace has just come out, and I was like, do you want to build a software company or do you want to build a design company? You have to make the decision. You can't do both. And he was kind of right. And I kind of moved it into Pentagram, and it just escalated into this sort of situation where I just couldn't manage it. Yeah. Sort of rebuild it. I couldn't really keep the types of developers I had. It was a different kind of culture, it was a different kind of model. Gotcha. And slowly but surely that unraveled over the years, and I sort of stopped. I stopped having developers in my team, and I stopped the MIG and said, ta-ra to software for a while.
So, since you're in this space now, have you seen your design philosophy change or evolve?
Yes, it's a really good question. I've had the chance to actually pop my head up, and I was looking at a photograph of myself the other day. Just started at Pentagram, and I had no grey hair, no dark rings around my. No, I think so. Yes, I've learned a fair amount through the observation, different partners, great conversations. Some, you have trials and you have tribulations, and you learn a fair amount of things. But also, you're kind of in competition with some of them as well at certain times. So, for instance, you may be working with, let's say, another partner on a job, right? Because Pentagram can be like this amazing transformer, so it can actually sort of connect up and build. Right. Crazy group. And but you can then also be like, let's say, working on a museum or on a bank or whatever it is, and another partner's doing the same thing, in a different in a different location for a different time, and you're like, gonna us on this, and they may have shown their work first. They're like, here's what we've done, and then you're like, I've got this. Okay. And so you've got that. So there's this competitive spirit that's there. You've got a collegiate spirit that's there. We didn't have that before. And then you have a thought leadership spirit that's seriously great and important. And so when I started lecturing, to different groups or different conferences, I would just tend to talk about just work. That was it. Like, here's what I've done. Thank you very much. And goodbye. You then start listening to the likes of Paula or Abbott or Michael Baruch and others, and it's very thematic. There's always a bigger question. It may not always be initially about their work. It might be about society. It might be about the design community as a whole and the conditions of it. It might be the idea of empowering designers, and then there may be just one job that they may show, or three that thread exceedingly well into the narrative. That's how you define. And so there's really golden opportunities to learn from them, and then they learn from you. It's quite a surprise, and learn a few things from partners where you're in a meeting and it's the way that they've noticed something and nobody thought about it, and they've been really clearly listening, observing the client, and they just have hit it on the nail. And you're just like, how did you do that? And then you slowly find how you do that. Then the other thing is, don't be scared. If you don't know, let's say you're in a new business job, and don't say that you know this area. You should tell the truth. You say, I don't know this area, but what I do know is that if you take this particular model in this particular direction,
Yes.
this may actually happen. This may occur, or there's an association with you in this particular way. And so that makes the client think about, you may not know, you may have read up about us, but you've never worked in this particular area, but you know other areas that interconnect with it. And that's seriously important. And I've seen my partners win jobs based on that.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy to hear, because it's like, you would think, I don't know, being a part of like this juggernaut, I would say, is like it's almost like, I don't know, it's like the brain, like the human brain, where it's like so many things can be floating around at once. It's like, how do you know what's the right thing to say? What's the right idea? But it's like, I think you just broke it down beautifully on how you guys work together as a team, one, because even me, I played football. Yeah, in practice, we got after it. But when it came game time, we understood what our ultimate goal was to win. And so that I totally get that. And man, that's crazy to hear how you guys just all kind of like ping pong stuff off each other to just make this dynamic group. Wow, that's fascinating. So another thing I came across when I was researching you was that you challenged that designers don't solve problems, but instead they address current situations. Can I tell you, my whole design career in college, they told me I was a problem solver.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see your take.
Yeah.
That.
Well, okay. Let me start off with this. I think it was about 2 years ago. I was talking to Paula, and Paula and I sit next to each other. We've been sitting next to each other for 15 years, nearly 15 years. And she said, design is planning, right? And she's not wrong, because if you look in I think Webster or even Oxford English Dictionary, it will state that. One of its particular derivatives. And that's fantastic. When you look at it from the point of view of problem solving, I wanted to sort of break it down, simplify it. My sister is a scientist, and scientists solve problems. Mathematicians solve problems. So, 1 + 1 = 2. It doesn't equal 3, right? So I said to myself, okay, designers, you could say that they solve problems, but let's look at it this way. A caveman is tired and he sits on a rock. So he's sort of solved a problem of, of the tired leg, and he's sat down, but he's got another problem. His arse hurts.
From the rock.
He's got another problem. So he's like, my arse hurts. I'm going to smooth this out. Somehow it might have taken centuries to do this, to smooth out the rock, or find another rock and sit down, or he's seen another caveman sitting on a smoother rock, and he's like, oh, he's sitting there a lot longer. All kinds of things, right? And then all of a sudden he's sitting there and he's like, oh, my back hurts, right? But then he sees another caveman, and the caveman sitting on a nice smooth rock with a nice and a back, right? And then he keeps going, right? Until you get a chair, until you get a stool. And so one of the things that I fundamentally are still breaking down today is that, okay, you can say to a certain degree that you solve a problem, but you get to a particular point where that chair is so flipping optimized, right, that you can sit on any chair, right? Now, have we solved the problem? of the chair? No, we keep designing new bloody chairs.
Sure.
And so I said to myself, well, you can say that, but it's not fully true. So you look at it from the point of view of a scientist as well. I mean, you could say that scientists solve problems, but and my sister was also saying, well, to a certain degree, we can't solve it 100%. No. Scientists don't do that. You cannot state correctly that you have solved something 100%, right? Mathematicians potentially do it from the 1 + 1 = 2, but when you get into really complex math, it gets harder. So the factor is that mathematicians don't say that they're problem solvers. Only designers say that they're problem solvers. I think we just gave ourselves that particular slogan because it just makes things easier and maybe makes people think that we're, intelligent. Of course we're bloody intelligent. But we're far more intelligent. It's more than this aspect of solving problems. And so this idea is, I've looked at it from this particular point of view. Like, design is the ability to produce a desired or intended result. I remember desired or intended, right?
Okay. Yes.
By being freed from constraints or difficulties through the application of rational thinking, creative skill, and also appraisal. Remember?
Yes.
Think about it. It's not working, or like that. Acquiring a transformational and progressive outcome. Now, the reason why people would say that's a little bit too long, but the fact of the matter is that we're more than just problem solvers. Like, well, come on, break it down for us a little bit more. I think we're more than that. We are more than that. And some people say, well, what's more than solving a problem? And I look at it this way. I look at it from the point of view of that there's so many results that you can create.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Right? So many options that are functional that you just have to choose. And you've just, based on appraisal, that you basically picked the one that you want, but you could have picked the other one. You could have picked the other route and it would have still worked. And another option and another option. So you're not really solving a problem.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Your intention, you kind of say intentionally sort of creating multiple options. And in this day and age of advanced technologies and large language, models, there's so many routes that one can take. And the desired result can be ascertained. Desired. Remember, you desired that result. And so that's the reason why. And it can be transformational. All of those routes can be transformational.
Yeah. Wow. Now I look at it completely different hearing that explanation, because I was kind of confused when I read it. I was like, that's one I have to ask him about.
Well, you also have to say, when you design something, sometimes it's like you're sitting with a client and you say, pick one, and then solve the problem. That doesn't work.
No, it has not worked many a time. That's funny.
You're really looking at it from this aspect of a particular situation, that moment in time that you're dealing with it. Because, if you solve the problem, why do you have to then change it?
Right.
Oh,
wow.
You have to go back to science, because look at it from virologists will basically tell you this, right? Look at it from COVID, right? You've got this virus. It's not curable, right? You can defend yourself from it, right? There's no real, it's very complex, and it also changes. It's always changing. And so the conditions are changing. And so if you expand that idea towards life in general, anything, like an app that you built or any other type of design, when it comes into conflict with something else or somebody else, it's going to have to change,
right?
Depending upon whether or not that thing or that person is hostile to it, right?
Right.
Or you're saying that this doesn't work anymore because the conditions have changed. Thus, you did not solve the problem, right? You kind of solved the problem within that particular moment in time.
Got you. Yeah.
But you can't. And so that's where we are at
right
now. Yeah, that's why I don't say.
Wow. Thank you for explaining that. Cause now I'm looking at it completely different. Like I've always been taught you are a problem solver. So now hearing this explanation, I'm very much on board with your thought process of it, because now that you've said you don't go back and fix it, you don't go back and change it. And I was like, dang, I didn't even think about it.
Yeah, you basically, because over the course of time it's been affected by other things, it's going to
Right.
break down. Thus, you have to rebuild it,
Right.
and thus you haven't solved the problem.
Right.
So again, it's a little bit like the caveman. It's like, oh, back's now hurting. You may not at that moment in time, but it's going to
Right.
hurt over the course of time. And so, yeah,
Wow.
that's
Wow. That's
that's how I
dynamic.
see things, and that's why I think that you should always look at things from a foundational standpoint, and then you can build onto that foundation.
Right.
Great companies do that. Nike does it. Coca-Cola does it. They build on, they branch out, they have a foundational construct that they've created, and then they build up from that and
Yes.
branch out from that.
Wow.
Right? They never say, I've solved the problem. No flipping way, man. No, they always want a transformational outcome, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Transformational outcome. That's going to stick with me. Now I got to share that with my students. That's what I'm taking and sharing with them. Wow. So you also have shared your take on the rise of design trolling, and like, so for me, is that in the sense of people using AI, just not making good designs, and you're seeing it out there, seeing bad design everywhere?
Yeah, I sort of take it back to this point. I think it was Michael Barut wrote an essay, very short essay on imagining that you're in a gladiator arena, and people are either thumbs up or thumbs down. Right. That's the type of entertainment that we're in right now. It's entertainment, and it's really trolling, and the conditions are getting worse and worse. We have so many different types of social media applications, the channels, and one wrong step that you didn't know was wrong, and you're toast. And that's why am I in that arena being judged like that? They're not, so when I say it's pretty much everybody. Why are you being judged? And I looked at it from this particular standpoint, where I went on stage in a conference in Canada, and it was really about design thinking or critical thinking. And I used a project that I just finished for Quinnipiac University. And the funny thing is that I found a clip on Fox News about the university redesign on the local channel, Fox local channel, about how, one or two students hated it, right? They didn't go into that 85, actually, no, 90, no, over 90% of the student body loved it, right? They looked at it from the point of view of hate. And then I stopped there, laughed a bit with the crowd, the audience, and then I went and started talking about the Eiffel Tower and the Tour de Eiffel, designed and built by Gustave Eiffel, the engineer, is a remarkable feat of engineering and also design. But at that moment in time, it was seen by these critics, and he had drawn it. He hadn't built it yet. And he had shown his drawings because it was part of an exposition. And they hated it. But the way that they wrote about it was exceedingly elegant in a very negative way. And thus it's constructive. They're being very constructive with their commentary. Now, I find that very, very productive, even though it went on to being the icon of France. That if you took it down today, right? If you took it down today, France would
Yeah, people would be
right?
like, where'd it go?
And so they're not stating that he should not build this. They criticize it in a different way, like, where are we going in society with, we're going with design and engineering, and it's an argument. It's a really good conversation. So then I went to and then I moved to under consideration, and I said, this is the Fox News of graphic design, right?
Yeah.
Now, and they didn't take that lightly. I think it's not nice, but I'm just to be absolutely exceedingly truthful about it, that what we are doing is we're dumbing down our profession to the point of nothing, right? No really clear critical thinking, moving forward for tomorrow, understanding things from a cultural and societal manner at all. We're just saying, nah, I could do better. Right? Why did he space it like that? Oh my God. What are we, children? Oh,
Yeah, it goes down like that
it
sometimes.
really goes down like that all the time. Or we're thumbs up, applaud. Some people, don't get me wrong. I mean, you go on Reddit and you'll see some
I love Reddit.
it works. But, I don't look at Reddit in that specific way. I looked at under consideration in that way. And I was like, saying we cannot go down this road. We need to be connoisseurs of what we do. And so we can start to establish a better grounding for our futures. Don't, to a certain degree, you kind of see it in architecture to a little lesser degree, but architecture really is on another level. This is not their age. This is our age. This is the age of information.
Right.
This is our age.
Right.
We should be the ones really pushing it.
Right.
And we're not. We're not. It's embarrassing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you said that because there's so many like Instagram designers and people showing you tricks and tips. I'm mixing the words
tricks
up.
and tips.
Yeah. So one of them I followed, his whole little like thing about him is like he goes in and rebrands logos, or he'll say, let's fix the UPS logo. Let's fix the Nike logo. Let's fix, I don't know, Starbucks logo. He says that. And granted, he's walking you through his full process. He shows you his take, not like what it should be. He, even at the end of the video, he says, what do you guys think? Literally, someone fixated on the word fix. They're like, oh, you're not giving credit to the original creators. You're dragging them down to make them lower. Like you're better. And I was just like, yo, the word fix? Like he didn't say anything disrespectful. He just says, let's fix this. And people hyper fixated on that word fix. And they drug him. They drug him so bad, dude turned off all the comments on his stuff because they were just like, oh, you think you're better? Like this sucks. I hope you never get hired. And I'm like, whoa, y'all doing too much. And even sometimes on Reddit, I go there and people post, when people post, they're like, can you give me feedback? Or I read the ones where it says, I'm a new designer. What could I know? And some of the posts I've heard where people are like, don't get into it. You'll fail. You suck. This is terrible. And then I actually saw one that said, can someone please give this person constructive criticism? They're trying here.
Yes.
They may not have a group to work with.
They don't have a community.
They don't have a community. So if you have something negative to say, please don't say it. This person is trying. And I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
That's
what it's wrong.
Yeah.
It's sad. It's
very much.
Haters.
Big
Too many
time.
haters.
Yes. So as we progress, I'm gonna be very mindful of your time. I know there's this one project that you worked on, and I was very kind of enamored by it because it was the men's best blends, the B3, a cannabis brand. And I know with your history of exploring themes of democracy and social responsibilities. So how did that approach to this brand that's advocating for decarceration and equality within the Black market, especially for Black consumers and Black people trying to get into the market of being owners, since we were hit so heavily, with the 30 strikes laws out here in California and everything like that. So what was your approach to working for a company like this?
Well, the backstory is that majority of what you just said didn't come from me. It came from Ben Cohen. And if nobody knows who Ben Cohen is, he is Ben from Ben and Jerry's. And I received an email from from Ben stating that, hi, Eddie, I got your name from Stefan Sagmeister, and who's a friend of mine. And he said, I should talk to you. I'll be probably the best person for this particular project. And I said, yeah, sure. A pleasure to to meet your acquaintance online. Let's talk. And this is during COVID. Then I looked up Ben Cohen in the aspects of cannabis. Behold, it was, you know,
Ben and Jerry's.
And we got talking on video, and I was just enamored that I'm talking to such a great man who's done a lot for social justice, a lot. Him and Jerry, and he's talking about this particular project, and what he wants to do is that he wants to support the Black community. He wants to the de-incarceration, that will support the de-incarceration of Black males in prison around the country. And he wants to have us gain a stronger voice by also creating different types of only selling to Black franchises. And I thought that was just phenomenal. I was like, where has he been all my life? Why can't all my clients be like Ben Cohen? And he said, you're going to work on this job, right? And I said, yes, absolutely. He said, you're really, okay, great. And then, I got my team together. We got on a call. We started conceiving ideas, presenting to him. And then I got an email that says, I really need to talk to you. And so I called him on the phone and I said, hi, Ben, what's up? And he's like, everything's going great, but I really want you to design this. And I'm like, but I am designing it. I'm actually, conceiving it, telling my team. He's like, no. I want you to start designing or illustrating some works.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so that's what I started to do as well. And started to really delve in a lot more into the day-to-day on this particular project. And it was very important for him. And he, once COVID was sort of, dying away, you could say, we started slowly going back into the office, and he came into the office once or twice, and with ice cream, came with bags of ice cream.
Love that.
Which is phenomenal. And also sort of like tokens for my boys, my boys. And, and I give it to them as like, the ice cream man gave you these. I was so happy. But the aspect of this job was that it went up all the way back to the sort of 3-level structure that I have, and more, right? So you're giving voice to this piece. We utilized Trace Seals' typefaces that were about the aspect of protest and empowerment and equality, and that made perfect sense. Ben brought the found quotes from Nelson Mandela, Davey. It was fantastic. You could see and feel that voice. But then there was also the idea that you want to be exceedingly distinct and very, very different from the rest of the marketplace.
Yes.
And it is.
Yes, it is.
It's not stereotypical at all, that you can devise a new way of looking at these types of products. Now, that is, and you can do it through narrative. You can do it through a strong narrative, not through certain, symbolic elements of leaves and crowns and dark colors, but you look at it through the ideas of artworks that depict, that redefine the idea of Black people. This idea that you look at a ad that has been developed that is very stereotypical and sort of like a lie in regards to how Black people sort of live their lives. And it's obfuscated. Artist Dana, she obfuscated the work so to say, no, this is not us. Blurred it through. This is not us. Let's start anew. Let's start afresh. And that's what she's showing, that sense of difference and freshness. It's really amazing. And then work that I was doing in regards to collage and the signifiers of flowers, of the idea of freedom and hope through aspects of using hyacinth, the symbolism through flowers that make up the form of a young Black man, a silhouette of a young Black man. And that, these types of visual messages a million miles away from your, say, traditional or even newer, fresher way of of marketing these types of products.
Right.
And truly sings. And I really appreciate my team who are not Black, who really got into it and understood it.
That's cool.
Work with me to get it right. Really fundamentally like that. Yeah.
Wow. So how did you feel once it was like fully completed and it was out there? How did that make you feel when you saw it?
Yeah. Really, it was there are times where, this idea of seeing something that you've made that you said you made that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was it. That was one of
That's
those times, and your spirit changes, right?
Yeah.
And you could think about it that this transcended material things, material values, that you're really helping people gain equality, gain freedom, gain a voice, and you're doing it in a way that's exceedingly different than normal. And there is a sort of spiritual element to it for me. And I really thank the likes of such an icon and activist as Ben Cohen. And that wasn't the only type of job that or person I spoke to. I mean, COVID really did a lot of crazy things, as we all know. But I worked on the Mellon Foundation at the same time, which is the sort of largest giver of money, within the arts. You're talking creative writing, you're talking dance, you're talking paint, art, general, to different cultural institutions around the country. An endowment is off the charts. And the director, who was the poet laureate for Obama, Elizabeth Arnold, was exceptional. Really amazing Black woman who really believed in me and my team to take on the mantle to revisualize, redefine with a greater team, not just Pentagram, but other teams that are involved in regards to the strategy aspects of that particular project, to sort of redefine what Mellon is for today and for the future. And how it interconnects to a larger community, a diverse community, and it nurtures that. And the results are there to be seen.
That's dynamic. That's powerful, man. Thank you for sharing that story, because I was just curious how that came up and how that happened. And I think you smashed it. You smashed it out the park, man. So just curious, got a couple more questions, but with your over 3 decades worth of knowledge and design knowledge, I know you probably have some things that keep you up at night and some things that you're just like, I don't even know where that came from. But where do you think designers will play in shaping the future of global communication? Because I know it could be a roller coaster for us. So where do you see it headed?
Well, I think one of the things is that we have to understand from a graphic design standpoint, and it's all the basis of a graphic designer, from aspects of brand and visual communications, more so than anything else, is that we are seen as a enabler of material things. And, many of us are on this planet.
Yeah.
And so we have to start to fundamentally think about us being more, not just an enabler, but also more of an influencer of affirmed methods of seeing, of doing, that have greater impact on society. Now, that's not an easy thing to do. We have roped ourselves in, myself included, into, day-to-day actions of working for large corporations or small corporations. Or organizations or companies or startups that want to get somewhere. We're missing out on the way that we communicate to society. And, number one, we should try our very best to do less within for material things. It's not just only the these sort of highbrow brands that, we constantly deal with on day to day. There is that, but you've got to be very conscious that you've got to do something within the social aspects of social justice, more so of dealing with civic projects with governments, right? And the sense of transformative change for the people that really need it. And you can also bring those large companies that way too, based upon the work that you've achieved. So that's I think the basis of where I think I need to go, and hopefully I can meet you there, because I think that that's what's troubles a lot of us today, that we're not doing enough and we don't know how to, because we don't have the money or we don't have the know-how, and we're just waiting for an organization to tell us, to come to us and say, can you do this? I think we can't really do that anymore.
Yeah. So I want to touch back on something you said. I made note of it while you were talking. You shared with us that design is spiritual. Well, actually, your father said it. And now, yeah, and then you brought it back, because I watched some of your talks, and I was just like, and then you said it again, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to ask him about that. So can you break that down for us, or just give us a little tidbit of that?
Yeah. So before I went to Yale, I was in my mum's kitchen, as we always are. We're always in our mum's kitchen.
Yeah.
Or our parents' kitchens, not our kitchen.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about, what the next steps are, me departing to America. And my father, he's a storyteller. He really is. He was. And he just came out with it. He said, design is right. And I fundamentally didn't understand what he meant then. And I was racking my brain for many, many years. And I think that it's really you're not concerned about you.
Right.
You're concerned about everybody, and giving them, and making sure that they are content, safe, and there's a sense of reflection there. So, we always say that it's not about material things, that you transcend that, and that's it. That he's right. It's like you're transcending the materiality to a point where you're saying that this is really, really good for you. This is really, really positive, and it is. You're doing good for the world. And you can kind of do good with the certain organizations and corporations that are within the sort of material areas. But it's also this idea that it makes you whole.
Yeah. It does. Yeah.
And it goes also back to Paula saying it's about planning, right? Yeah. It's about planning, right? That you can look at different avenues and set certain things up and have transformative outcomes from it. Right?
Yeah.
If something's bothering you, and this is maybe where the solve the problem thing comes in, maybe when something's bothering you, you plan it out. You kind of try to, deal with that situation, and it is a situation. Yeah. And so I think that is important, and it is right that everybody is a designer, but everybody's not a critic. Yeah. You know when to shut up.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So,
look at yourself, look inward. Do you think that you are perfect?
Far from it.
Far from it. So why would
So, Eddie, before we get off of here, I just have one more question. What is the piece of advice or inspiration you would like to leave this next generation of creatives who are striving to make differences through design, and who are striving to get into positions that you yourself are in today? What advice would you give?
I would state this. If you are struggling, find your footing in this area. Talk with a professional. Now, observe that professional to see if they're also struggling first, and sit down with them, right? Don't have to do it over Zoom. You can, or, whatever video conferencing system you want to use, and have a chat, not just one chat. Have a series of conversations. Do not make your mind up so quickly. Why? Why is because this area that we're in is a lot deeper. It's not so shallow as you think. It's a lot deeper. There's areas of it that you may not know about, that actually may interest you. There's specific genres of what we do that are quite important, that may suit you more than what you are doing, right?
Yes.
And I think that that's seriously important. But then if you also are struggling to get a footing after that fact, right, you have to contemplate, what am I doing wrong, and how can I open myself up to new ways of thinking about doing it, right? Remember, it's not one way of doing things. There's many different ways of doing that thing. So it's not about solving that specific thing, right? That's an old, very modernist type of approach. Think about the different avenues that you can go down. Don't look at yourself and say that you're a failure. Do not look at yourself and say that you are a absolute smashing success. Be transparent and make sure that you talk to others about the conditions. Make sure that you open yourself up for that sense of change. There was another thing I wanted to state. If you can, travel.
Yes.
One of the best ways, right? One of the things that I did as a kid is have a friend that says, do you want to go to Holland? And to be absolutely honest, to go to Holland back then, it was about £30. It's really super cheap. I think it still is not. It's really, really cheap. You can either go by air, you can go by boat, you can go by train now. Travel. Try to travel outside this country.
Yes.
Outside of your country. You start to see the world. Might just be one location, right? And find different studios. Well-known ones that are, off the beaten path, that maybe have one person in that studio, and just have a conversation. Have conversations, build your community, build different friendships. It's seriously empowering. You have to do it. And if you can't do that, I go to the next state, or go to New York, or go to San Francisco, or go to Chicago. Visit them. Don't state that I want to get a job there. Have a conversation, right? It's not just about, I want to be employed. Have a conversation with the likes of me, or you, Justin, or even Paula, any well-known or up-and-coming designers. We're all there.
Yes.
Don't just stick to social media and thumbs up and thumbs down.
Right. Well, you guys, what can I say? The great Eddie came through, blessed us with some gems. So let's just end it right there, you guys. My name is Justin Robinson. I had the great Eddie Opara on the podcast with us today, and this is the Art School Graduate. We'll catch you guys next time. Peace.
Thank you.